I found the papers on a day that was supposed to be boring. Imagine living your whole life with one simple truth. This is my mom, this is my dad, and this is my sister. Now imagine finding one document that calmly says, no, one paper, one line, one name, and suddenly the person you called your sister is listed as your birth mother. That wasn't a movie twist. That was my real life. Starting the day, I opened a dusty box and watched my identity collapse in my hands. It was a Saturday, the kind where the air feels tired and the light coming through the windows looks pale, like it's already thinking about leaving. My parents, I still called them that then, were out at the grocery store. I stayed behind because Mom asked me to finally go through the attic like it was a simple chore, like it was folding laundry. The attic was not a place I visited. It wasn't scary, exactly. It just felt like a room full of old breath. The air up there was warm and dry, and everything smelled like cardboard and time. I climbed the ladder, pushed the hatch open, and pulled myself up. The insulation looked like gray snow. Boxes were stacked like silent buildings. I saw old Christmas decorations, Dad's broken fan, a suitcase with a missing wheel, and a shelf that bowed under the weight of forgotten things. I told myself I would be efficient. I was. At first, I just moved boxes around, reading labels like winter clothes, kitchen, photos, Maya school. Maya was my sister. She was 8 years older than me, old enough to act like she lived in a different universe. She moved out when I was 10. She came back for holidays, birthdays, and quick visits where she hugged me too tightly, like she was trying to hold something together. I found a box labeled important in black marker. It was taped shut with thick brown tape that had gone brittle at the edges. Whoever taped it didn't want it opened. Of course, that made me want to open it. I carried it closer to the attic light, a single bulb hanging like a lonely thought, and sat on a dusty trunk. When I pulled at the tape, it made a ripping sound that felt too loud, like the house could hear it. Inside were folders. Real folders, the kind with metal clips, not the cute home paperwork kind. These looked serious. Official. I flipped through property papers, insurance, old bank statements, a birth certificate for Maya, a marriage certificate, normal stuff. Then I saw a thin envelope inside the folder, sealed with my name typed neatly on the front. Not handwritten, typed. My stomach tightened. I stared at it for a full minute, like staring could tell me what was inside. Then I opened it. The paper inside was crisp in a way old papers usually are. It had been protected, preserved. Like someone wanted it to survive longer than the truth did. At the top, in bold, it said. My vision went blurry for a second, like my eyes couldn't agree with what they were reading. I laughed once, very softly, without meaning to. That's not possible, I whispered. I had never, not once, suspected I was adopted. Not once. My parents never made jokes about it. Nobody ever hinted. I looked like Dad, or at least that's what people said, same dark eyes, same stubborn eyebrows. I grew up in this house. I had baby pictures on the wall. I had storybooks with my name written inside. I had a life that made sense, so why was I holding adoption papers? My hands shook as I scanned the lines. There were names, there were dates. There were signatures, and then my eyes landed on the part labeled birth mother. The line was filled with a name I knew so well I could have written it in my sleep. Maya Elise, my sister. My sister was listed as my mother. I read it again, then again. My brain kept trying to correct it like autocorrect in my head. Birth mother Maya, no, that's wrong. Birth mother Maya, no, no, no. I held the paper closer, like distance was the problem. I moved it farther away, like perspective could fix it. I even turned it slightly sideways like I was checking if the ink changed at an angle. It didn't. The truth stayed the truth. My sister was my mother. I felt something cold wash through my chest, like my body didn't know what to do with that information, so it chose fear. My throat went tight. My mouth went dry. I kept reading because stopping felt worse. Birth father, blank, a dash, or maybe it was a line through the space. The next section listed the adoptive parents. And that's when the floor truly disappeared under me, because the names on the adoptive parent line were the names I called Mom and Dad. The people who tucked me in. The people who yelled when I left dishes in the sink. The people who taught me how to ride a bike. The people who told me, "We love you more than anything." They were listed as my adoptive parents, not my parents. Adoptive. My hands began to sweat. The paper felt slippery, like it was trying to escape me. My mind raced backwards through every memory, trying to find the moment where someone slipped. A weird comment. A suspicious silence. A missing detail. And suddenly, small moments I never understood began to glow in a new light. The way Mom would stiffen if someone said, "You look so much like your mother." The way Dad hated questions about when you were pregnant with him. The way Maya always acted, complicated around me. Loving but nervous, proud but sad, like she was carrying something she didn't put down. I thought it was just her personality. Now it felt like a secret she wore under her skin. My chest hurt. Like the air had gotten heavier. I heard a car door slam outside. My parents were back. Panic snapped through me like electricity. I shoved the paper back into the envelope, shoved the envelope back into the folder, and shoved the folder back into the box like I was putting a bomb back where it belonged. I sealed the box quickly, messy, not caring about tape lines. Then I pushed it behind two other boxes like it could hide the truth by proximity. I climbed down the ladder too fast, almost slipping on the last rung. When I landed, my knees felt weak. I stood in the hallway below the attic hatch, listening. I heard grocery bags rustle, keys. Mom's voice calling my name like everything was normal. "Sweetheart, you up there?" My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I forced myself to speak. "Yeah." "I'm here." I walked to the kitchen like a person pretending to be a person. Mom looked at me and smiled. "Good, I bought the cereal you like." My heart pounded. I stared at her face, searching for something I'd never looked for before. Guilt, fear, a crack. She looked ordinary, tired, kind, normal, and that made it worse. Because it meant she could live in a lie the same way she lived in a normal day. Dad walked in and nodded at me. "How's the attic?" My throat tightened. I almost said, "How's my whole life?" Instead I said, "Dusty." He laughed. "Everything up there is dusty, just don't fall through the ceiling." I stared at him, thinking, you already fell through my ceiling. Years ago, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't stop hearing the word adoption in my head like a siren. That night, I waited until the house was quiet. When I was sure they were asleep, I crept back to the attic. My phone flashlight shook in my hand as I climbed. The box was still where I hid it. I pulled it out slowly, like I was afraid it would scream. I sat on the same trunk and opened it again. The envelope was still there, my name still typed neatly on the front. I took the paper out and read it again, hoping the ink had changed while I wasn't looking. It hadn't. I began to read every line carefully, like a detective, like a lawyer, like someone who could find a loophole big enough to crawl back into safety. There was a date, a court stamp, a case number, and a detail that made my skin prickle. The adoption was finalized when I was 3 months old. 3 months. So my parents had me from the beginning. And Maya was 16 when I was born. 16, my sister was 16. I put a hand over my mouth. I remembered Maya at 16. I remembered her braces, her ponytail, her angry music, her loud laughter. I remembered her slamming doors and shouting at Mom and Dad. I remembered thinking she was dramatic. 16. A 16-year-old giving birth, and me never knowing. My brain tried to picture it and couldn't. I sat there for a long time, holding the paper, shaking quietly. Not crying yet, just shaking, because crying would mean accepting it, and I wasn't ready. The next morning, I woke up like I hadn't slept at all. I watched Mom make coffee, and Dad read the news like our family was exactly what it had always been. I wanted to scream. Instead, I decided to test the truth the way people do when they're afraid of it. I decided to look for more proof, because part of me still believed it could be a mistake. Maybe there was another Maya. Maybe it was a clerical error. Maybe adoption papers could be wrong. I spent the next few days searching like my life depended on it. When Mom was out, I went through drawers I'd never touched. I opened photo albums carefully, looking for missing months. I checked dates on the back of pictures. I looked for any photo of Mom pregnant with me. There were none, not one. There were baby pictures of me. There were family photos holding me, but none of Mom with a belly, not even a joke photo. Not even a single shot in a mirror. My mouth went dry again. I found Maya's old baby book. Then mine. Maya's book had hospital bracelets taped inside, a birth announcement, a lock of hair. Mine had a few photos and a handwritten note. Our blessing. No hospital bracelet, no hospital name, no birth details, just love, like love could replace facts. My hands trembled as I closed it. That night I called Maya. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. We weren't the kind of siblings who talked every day. She lived in another city. She worked too much. She always sounded like she was halfway between rushing and resting. When she answered, her voice was warm. "Hey, kiddo, what's up?" "Kiddo," I swallowed hard. "I just wanted to hear your voice." A pause. "You okay?" I stared at my wall, my heart hammered. I almost blurted everything out right there, but I didn't. Instead, I asked, casually, like my life wasn't on fire, "Do you remember when Mom was pregnant with me?" Silence. Not a normal silence, a heavy one. "Maya," I said softly. She cleared her throat. "Why are you asking that?" My stomach dropped, because that wasn't denial, that wasn't confusion, that was fear. "I don't know," I lied, "just I was thinking about childhood stuff." Another pause. Then she forced a laugh that sounded like it hurt. "You and your random questions." I tried again. "So, do you remember?" Her voice got careful. "I remember a lot of things." That answer was a door closing. I felt tears sting my eyes. "Okay." "Hey," she said, gentler. "Are you sure you're okay?" I wanted to tell her. I wanted to scream, "Why didn't you tell me?" But my throat locked. "I'm fine," I whispered. "Just tired." She didn't believe me, I could hear it. "All right," she said. "Call me anytime, yeah?" "Yeah," I said. We hung up. And I sat there with my phone in my lap, staring at nothing, feeling like I was watching my own life from far away. A few days later, I went to see my aunt, Dad's sister. She lived across town. She had always been blunt, the kind of woman who believed secrets were just lies with good outfits. I showed up with a fake smile and a bag of pastries like I was a normal nephew. She hugged me, then stepped back and frowned. "What's wrong with you?" Her eyes were sharp, like she could smell fear. "Nothing," I said too quickly. She didn't buy it. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I laughed weakly. "Just stress." She watched me for a long moment. Then she said, "Sit." We sat at her kitchen table. She poured tea, clinked a spoon, waited. Finally, I pulled the envelope out of my jacket like I was pulling out a weapon. Her eyes flicked to it, and I saw something change in her face. Not surprise, not confusion. I slid the paper across the table. She read the top line. Her hand froze. For a second, she looked like she might faint. Then she closed her eyes slowly, like someone bracing for impact. "Oh," she whispered. That one word broke me. Because if she knew what it meant, then it wasn't a mistake. My voice came out shaky. "You knew." She didn't answer right away. She stared at the paper like it was poison. "I didn't want to," she said finally. "I didn't want to know, but yes, I knew." My stomach turned. "Everyone knew." She flinched. "Not everyone." "But enough." I leaned forward, anger rising like heat. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Her eyes filled with something like regret. "Because your parents," she stopped, corrected herself. "Because they were terrified. They thought the truth would ruin everything." I laughed once, sharp and bitter. "It already did." She reached across the table, hesitant. "Honey, they did love you." I pulled my hand back like her touch burned. "Love doesn't erase a lie," she sighed. "I'm not defending it, I'm telling you what they believed." I swallowed hard. "So it's true," her shoulders sank. "Yes," I stared at the paper, the words blurred, my voice dropped to almost nothing. "Maya is my mom." Aunt's eyes closed again. "Yes." For a moment the room felt too small for the truth. I stood up quickly. "I need to go." She stood too. "Please talk to them calmly." I looked at her, tears finally spilling. "How do I calmly ask someone why they stole my life?" Her face broke. "I'm sorry." I left before she could say anything else. The drive home felt unreal. The streets looked the same. The sky looked the same, but I wasn't the same. When I got home, Mom was in the living room folding laundry. Dad was in the backyard messing with something broken, as usual. Normal, normal, normal. I walked into the living room and stood in front of Mom. She looked up. "Hi, sweetheart, how was your aunt?" My hands shook. I held the paper out. Her eyes landed on it, and her face drained of color so fast it scared me. For a second, she looked like she might fall off the couch. She didn't ask what it was. She didn't say, "Where did you get that?" She didn't say, "What are you talking about?" She just stared at it like she had been waiting for this day her entire life. And in that moment, I knew something else too. They had never been relaxed. They had just been lucky. Mom's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes filled instantly. "Please," she whispered. "Not like this." My voice shook with anger. "Not like what? Like the truth." She stood slowly, hands trembling. Is it real?" I demanded. "Tell me it's not real." She started crying before she spoke. Dad walked in from outside, wiping his hands on a towel. He stopped when he saw Mom's face. "What's going on?" Mom didn't answer. She couldn't. I turned the paper toward him. He read the first line. His jaw tightened. His eyes went wet. And he did the same thing Mom did. No confusion, no surprise, just fear. I felt my chest crack open. "So it's true," I said quietly. Dad sat down hard in the chair like his legs gave up. "Son," I flinched at the word son. Mom reached for me. "Please listen," I stepped back. "Don't touch me, not right now." She covered her mouth with her hand, sobbing. Dad stared at the floor like he was searching for a place to hide. I held up the paper, my hand shaking. "Why?" Mom's voice came out broken. "We were trying to protect you." I laughed, ugly and sharp. "Protect me from what?" "My own life," Dad whispered. "Maya was 16. "I know," I said, my eyes burned. "I know, I did the math." Mom cried harder. "It was complicated." "No," I snapped. "It's not complicated. It's simple, you lied." Dad's voice rose, pained. "We did what we thought was best." I stared at him. "For who?" Silence. That silence answered everything. "For you," Mom said quickly. "For Maya. For the family, for everyone." "Everyone," I repeated, numb. "Except me." Mom sank to her knees like she couldn't hold herself up. "We loved you from the second you came into this world." I felt tears run down my face, but my voice stayed cold. "And you still let me live in a lie." Dad looked up at me, eyes red. "We were scared you'd hate us." I swallowed hard. "You should have been scared of this moment, because this is the moment I realize I don't even know who you are." Mom sobbed. "You are our child." I shook my head slowly. "I don't know what I am." Then I asked the question that had been burning like acid in my throat. "Does Maya know I found out?" Mom froze. Dad's face tightened. Mom whispered, "No." I stared at her, stunned. "You never planned to tell me." Mom couldn't speak. Dad's voice cracked. "We thought maybe it would never come up." My hands clenched into fists. "You thought the truth would just stay buried." Dad's shoulders shook. "We prayed it would." I backed away, shaking my head. "I need to talk to Maya." Mom panicked. "No, please." Dad stood up fast. "Don't do this," I shouted, louder than I ever had in that house. "You already did this." Then I walked out. I drove to Maya's place without calling. It was 2 hours away, and every mile felt like I was leaving one life and driving toward another life I didn't want. When she opened her apartment door, she smiled until she saw my face. "Hey," she said slowly. "What happened?" I didn't even step inside. I held out the adoption papers. Her eyes dropped to the page. She went still, like someone hit pause on her whole body. Then she closed her eyes and whispered, "Oh my God." That sound, her voice on those words, felt like a confession. My voice shook. "It's true." She didn't deny it. She didn't pretend. She just leaned her forehead against the doorframe like she couldn't stand. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice small. The hallway felt too bright, too quiet. I stepped inside, because standing outside felt like being homeless. She led me to her couch without speaking, like both of us were walking through a storm. She sat across from me, hands clenched, eyes wet. I stared at her face, the face I'd known my whole life. My sister, my mother. The words didn't fit in my mouth. "How long," I whispered, "were you going to let me live like this?" She wiped her eyes roughly. "I didn't know how to tell you." I laughed bitterly. "That's everyone's excuse." Her voice broke. I was 16. I know, I said, but you've been older than 16 for a long time. She flinched like I slapped her. I hated that I enjoyed it for a second. Then guilt hit me. Because she looked devastated, not caught, not exposed, just devastated. She whispered, I wanted to tell you 100 times. I leaned forward, anger shaking through me. Then why didn't you? She stared at her hands. Because I was afraid you'd look at me and only see a mistake. I swallowed. You let me call you my sister. Her lips trembled. I thought it would hurt you less. I shook my head. It hurt me more. It made me a stranger in my own story. She started crying silently, tears sliding down her cheeks like she didn't have energy for sound. Tell me everything, I said, voice low. All of it. No more missing pieces, she nodded slowly. Okay. She took a deep breath like she was preparing to dive underwater. I got pregnant my sophomore year, she began. I didn't even realize for a while. I was scared. I hid it. I watched her face, trying to match her story to the girl I remembered. The angry teenager, the one who slammed doors. That anger suddenly had a shape. She continued. When Mom found out, she screamed. Dad didn't speak to me for 2 days. They said I'd ruined my life. They said I'd ruined their lives. My chest tightened. Maya swallowed. They wanted me to get rid of it. I froze. What? She nodded, eyes haunted. They said it like it was a practical problem. Like fixing a leaky sink. My stomach churned. But I couldn't, she whispered. I couldn't do it. I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew I couldn't do that. She wiped her face. So they came up with the plan. I didn't blink. What plan? She looked up at me, eyes red. They said they would raise you as their own. They said it would save me, save the family. Save everyone from shame. My hands clenched. And you agreed, she flinched again. I was 16, I was terrified, I didn't have money, I didn't have power. I had parents who told me if I didn't do it, I'd be kicked out, I'd be alone. I stared at her, breathing hard. She whispered, I didn't feel like I had a choice. I wanted to argue. But part of me knew that might be true. I knew our family. Image mattered to them like oxygen. Maya continued, voice shaky. They told me I would still be around you, that you would still know me. That you'd have a better life. I laughed, bitter and broken. A better life built on a lie. Her tears fell faster. I know. I know. I pressed my palm against my forehead, trying not to fall apart. Who's my father? Her face tightened. She looked away. I don't know, she whispered. Not for sure. My stomach dropped again. What do you mean? She swallowed hard. I was stupid. I was a kid. It was messy. I was with someone older. He didn't want anything to do with it. Rage flared in my chest. You don't even know, she winced. I'm sorry. I stood up and started pacing, like moving could keep me from exploding. So everyone agreed, I said, voice rising. Everyone sat around like this was a solution, and nobody asked what it would do to me. Maya's voice trembled. I asked. I stopped. What? She looked up, tears pouring. I asked. I said, what if you find out? What if you hate me? What if you hate them? What if you feel like you don't belong anywhere? My throat tightened. And they told me, she whispered, that you'd never find out. They said they'd make sure. I laughed hollow. Great job. Maya looked like she was going to collapse. I'm not proud of any of it. I stared at her for a long time. Then I asked the question that scared me most. Did you love me like a mom? She inhaled sharply, like the question punched her. Yes, she said immediately. Yes, God, yes. Her voice broke. I loved you so much it hurt, but I wasn't allowed to show it too much. Every time I got too close, Mom would pull me back. She'd say, remember your role. My skin prickled, like we were actors. She whispered, I watched you grow up from the inside. I watched you call them Mom and Dad. I watched you run to them when you got hurt, and every time you did, I felt like I was disappearing. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. She leaned forward, pleading. I didn't want to steal your peace. I didn't want you to carry my pain. I stared at her. So you gave me a different pain. She nodded, sobbing. I know. For a while, neither of us spoke. The room was filled with the sound of two people breathing through a tragedy. Finally, I asked quietly, why did you act weird around me sometimes? She wiped her cheeks. Because I was jealous of myself, she whispered. Jealous of the life you got. jealous of the version of me that got to be your mom without consequences. I swallowed hard. And sometimes, she said, voice shaking, I looked at you and wondered if you hated me without even knowing it. Like your body knew the truth your mind didn't. That sentence made something in my chest crack, because maybe my body had known. Maybe that's why I always felt slightly off, in that family, even when everything looked fine. I remembered little moments. Mom snapping too fast when I asked questions about when she had me. Dad changing the subject when relatives joked. You were such a surprise baby. Maya staring at me at birthdays like she was mourning something. And me brushing it off, because kids don't assume betrayal. Kids assume love. That night I didn't sleep at Maya's place. I couldn't. I drove back home in silence, hands tight on the steering wheel, tears drying on my face. When I walked into the house, Mom was waiting in the living room like she hadn't moved since I left. Dad stood behind her, arms crossed, face destroyed. Mom stepped toward me. Did you talk to her? I nodded. Mom's eyes filled. What did she say? I held up the paper. She told me the truth. Dad swallowed hard. Son, I flinched again. Stop calling me that like you didn't rewrite my life. Dad's face crumpled. We raised you. We loved you. I stared at him, voice low. Then why couldn't you respect me enough to tell me? Mom whispered. We were scared. I shook my head. You weren't scared of hurting me. You were scared of losing control. Dad's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. I looked at Mom. Did you ever plan to tell me? She cried. No. At least she finally told the truth. I nodded slowly. Okay, Mom reached out. Please don't hate us. I stepped back. I don't even know what I feel. Then I walked to my room and locked the door. For days, I lived like a ghost in that house. I went to work. I came home. I ate without tasting. I spoke only when necessary. Mom tried to act normal and failed. Her eyes followed me everywhere like she was watching a car crash in slow motion. Dad stayed quiet, like silence could fix what he broke. And I kept replaying one thought. Who am I? Because when your origin story changes, everything feels unstable. My childhood memories felt edited. My family photos felt staged. Even my name felt borrowed. One night, I pulled out the adoption paper again and stared at my birth mother line until my eyes burned. Maya, my sister, my mom. I tried saying it out loud in my room, alone. My sister is my mom. It sounded insane. I tried again, softer. My mom is my sister. It felt like swallowing glass. The next week, Maya came to the house. I heard her car outside and my stomach twisted. Mom opened the door and burst into tears immediately. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years. Maya stepped inside slowly, eyes swollen, face pale. She looked at me and froze. For a moment, we just stared at each other like strangers sharing the same blood. Then she whispered, "Hi." I didn't answer. Not because I hated her. Because I didn't know what to call her. Because Maya felt too simple and Mom felt impossible. We sat in the living room like a courtroom. Mom clutched tissues. Dad stared at the floor. Maya sat with her hands folded like a kid about to be punished. Finally, Maya spoke, voice shaking. "I'm sorry," Dad whispered. "We all are." I laughed once, bitter. "Sorry is what you say when you step on someone's foot. You stole my entire truth." Mom sobbed harder. Maya's tears fell again. "I know." I looked at her. "Did you ever want to keep me?" Her face crumpled. "Yes." Mom gasped like the word was a knife. Maya looked at Mom. "I did, but you didn't let me." Mom's voice rose, panicked. "You were a child." Maya's voice rose too, finally. "And he didn't deserve to know where he came from." Dad spoke sharply. "Enough." I stared at all of them, shaking. "So this is it. This is the family meeting where you finally admit I was a problem you solved." Mom reached for me again. "No," I stood up. "Don't, please." "Not right now." I walked out of the living room and into the kitchen, breathing hard, trying not to explode. A minute later, Maya followed. She stopped at the doorway, hesitant. "Can we talk?" "Just us?" I didn't turn around. "We've been talking." She swallowed. "Not like this." I leaned against the counter, staring at my hands. "What do you want from me, Maya?" Her voice broke. "I want you to know you weren't unwanted. You weren't shame. You weren't a mistake." I looked up, eyes burning. But you were 16, she nodded. Yes, and I was terrified. And I still loved you, I swallowed hard. Why didn't you fight harder? She flinched. I did in the ways I could. I shook my head. I needed you to do the one thing that mattered. Tell me, she whispered. I was afraid I'd lose you. I laughed, pained. You lost me anyway. Her shoulders shook. I know. She stepped closer, careful. I'm not asking you to forgive me today. I'm asking you not to disappear. I stared at her, tears finally falling. I don't know how to be in this family anymore. She nodded slowly. Then we build a new way. I wiped my face, frustrated. What do I call you? Her eyes filled again. Whatever you want, whatever feels safe. I whispered, nothing feels safe. She nodded like she understood. Okay. Then we start small. I stared at her, exhausted. Small how? She took a breath. Dinner, just you and me, somewhere neutral, we talk or we don't. You ask questions or you don't. But we show up. I didn't answer right away, because part of me wanted to run. But another part of me, the part that still remembered her hugging me too tightly, didn't want to lose her completely. So I nodded barely. One dinner, I said, her face softened with relief. One dinner. That dinner was awkward. I won't romanticize it. We sat in a small restaurant where nobody knew us. We stared at menus like we were studying for an exam. She told me small truths. How she used to stand outside my room when I was a baby just to hear me breathe. How she wrote letters to me she never gave me. How she cried on my birthdays and pretended it was allergies. I told her my truths too. How I always felt like the extra kid, like my parents were older and tired, and I didn't know why. How I envied my friends who had parents with energy. How I felt guilty for being angry, because they fed me and clothed me and showed up. Maya listened like every word mattered, and for the first time I felt something else besides rage. I felt grief. Because it wasn't just a lie, it was a whole lifetime that could have been different. Over the next months, I learned the truth in layers, like peeling an onion that never stops making you cry. I learned there were relatives who refused to talk to Maya when she was pregnant. I learned Dad almost kicked her out. I learned Mom held onto control like a lifeline. I learned Maya's moving out at 18 was partly escape, partly punishment. I learned my family wasn't just hiding a secret, they were built around it. And I learned something else too. Maya wasn't just the person who gave birth to me. She was also someone who had been forced into silence, then forced into a role, then forced into pretending her own child was her sibling. That didn't erase what they did to me. But it changed the shape of my anger. I started therapy. Not because someone told me to, because I needed a place where reality didn't shift every time I spoke. My therapist asked me, what hurts the most? And the answer surprised me. It wasn't just the adoption. It wasn't just the lie. It was the feeling that everyone thought I couldn't handle the truth. Like I was too weak to know my own story. Like my life belonged to them. One day, months after I found the papers, I sat down with Mom and Dad again. Not to forgive, to set boundaries. I told them, you don't get to control this anymore. You don't get to decide what I know. If there are more secrets, I want them now. Mom cried. Dad nodded. They promised. I didn't fully believe them, but it was something. Then I asked them a question I hadn't asked yet. Do you regret it? Mom looked like she might break in half. Dad stared at his hands. Mom whispered, I regret lying. Dad's voice cracked. I regret the fear that made us selfish. I nodded slowly. That's the first honest thing I've heard from you in a long time. After that, things didn't magically heal. There were still bad days, days where I didn't answer Mom's calls. Days where I snapped at Dad over small things, because the big thing was still bleeding. Days where Maya would say something casual like, when you were little, and I'd feel my chest tighten, because she remembered my childhood in a different way than I did. But there were good days too. Days where Maya and I laughed like real siblings, and then sat in the quiet afterward like two people sharing a secret that was finally allowed to exist. Days where Mom apologized without making excuses. Days where Dad listened without trying to be right. The strangest part was learning that family can be two things at once, a wound and a home. About a year after the attic day, Maya invited me to her apartment again. She said she had something to give me. When I arrived, she looked nervous, like she used to when I was a kid and she was hiding something. She handed me a small box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me. All dated over the years, but never sent. My hands shook as I picked one up. The first line said, "Hi, my love, it's your mom. I can't tell you that yet, but I need to say it somewhere." I sat down hard. Tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink a little. Maya sat beside me, not touching, just present. "I wrote those when I couldn't breathe," she whispered, "when pretending was killing me." I looked at her through tears. "Why are you giving them to me now?" she swallowed. "Because you deserve to have every piece of your story, even the messy parts." I nodded, crying quietly. "Okay." That night, I read letters until sunrise. I read about Maya's fear, her love, her regret, her anger, her hope. And for the first time since the attic, the truth didn't feel like a weapon. It felt like a map, not a perfect one, not a pretty one, but mine. I still don't call Maya Mom. Not because I'm punishing her, because the word is heavy and my mouth still isn't used to it. Maybe one day, maybe not, but I do call her when I'm overwhelmed. And when she answers, she doesn't say kiddo anymore like a shield. She says my name, and I say hers, and for now that's enough, because the truth didn't just shatter my life. It also did something else. It gave me the right to rebuild it honestly. If it helped you even a little, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone. I'll see you in the next story.